Welcome today. I would like to virtually welcome you to FARO headquarters in Lake Mary, Florida. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We are very excited. We have a brand new handheld 3D scanner, the Freestyle 2, innovative new tool that's really helping our customers capture more data faster. We're happy to share that with you today. So I'm going to briefly go over our agenda. The first thing we're going to do is talk about using handheld scanners for crime or crash scenes. We're going to take you for a little trip into the FARO Vault, where we talk about the history of our FARO handheld laser scanners. Of course, we're going to talk about how they work, and one of our most popular questions about merging handheld scanner data like Freestyle 2 data with terrestrial laser scanners like the Focus. You're also going to get to hear a little user testimonial from a customer of ours who got a sneak peek and a little firsthand experience with the Freestyle 2. Let me introduce your panel for today. My name is Alina Burrows. I'm a Senior Field Applications Engineer at FARO Technologies, and I will be your moderator today. You're also going to be hearing from a well-known name in the laser scanning community, Mr. David Dustin, who is Director of Industry Solutions Public Safety at FARO. And we're going to be hearing from Lieutenant Gabe Mullinax, Knox County Sheriff's Office Forensic Services Bureau or Unit. And he's going to be telling you about his experience with Freestyle 2. If you have any questions today, we want you to type those questions in the Q&A section, which you will find at the bottom center of your screen. Open up that question Q&A panel, type questions. If you have a specific presenter that you would like to answer that question, you can go ahead and address it to them. Because today, manning that Q&A box, we've got Marco Torcello, Product Manager for the Freestyle 2, and Sunita Volette, Integrated Marketing Director for Public Safety. So we have a knowledgeable crew of panelists that are up here today that are going to answer all of your questions. We are also going to save some time at the end to answer a little live Q&A. And don't worry if we don't get a chance to get to your question live, we will follow up with an email to you afterwards. Now, David is incredibly excited about this, as everybody at FARO is. So I'm going to pass it over to David right now. David.
Thank you, Alina, for that great introduction, and thank you all for answering the poll questions. It's always interesting to know who our users are. Obviously, there are probably some competitors or some old friends and maybe some new friends we haven't met yet, so welcome to our webinar. As Alina said, I get pretty excited or geeked up about this kind of stuff, so these are a lot of fun for us to do. We really enjoy them. I actually happen to own the very first Freestyle 1 ever sold in the world, and I still have it to this day. And so I actually used that device on this particular case in Atlanta. Something that I want to highlight is that when I did capture the interior of this vehicle, it actually took 12 individual scans, and my capture time was roughly about 1 hour. The reason for that lengthy, or the amount of captures, the original device didn't really let you capture for that long. So you needed to keep those data captures fairly short, but you also have to do quite a bit of overlap to make sure that you could register those scans together. And you also see that there's some voids in the scan area because the minimum scan range of the device for the main unit, at least the one I had, was approximately 1 meter. This is another scan that I worked on. This is a homicide scene, obviously. And same thing, it was 5 scans, and it was about 20 minutes to capture this data. Now you'll notice that to capture around something like a body, you have to be really, you have to pay attention. You want to go low, you want to go high, you want to make sure that you get in any voids to make sure that the body is captured correctly. And it did a pretty good job. I mean, as far as the data capture, and for the time, it was really exceptional. But again, it was 5 scans, 20 minutes, and you had to do a minimum amount of overlap so that you could register those scans together. So a little history on the Freestyle 1. So it was introduced way back in 2015, which seems like eons now in the tech world. We sold it into public safety and the AEC markets. It received the product of the year for our hardware product of the year for 2015. And it came in 3 flavors. It was the Freestyle 3D, which is the one I have. It came in the Freestyle X, which was a little more accurate. And then we had the Freestyle O, which was primarily used for scanning, as the name implies, objects. Power was pulled directly from the tablet that you held in one hand, depending whether you were right-handed or left-handed. So you had the tablet in one hand, and then you had the Freestyle in the other. It was used in a fair number of homicides in the US. I think I probably used it on at least 3 or 4 cases, and then I knew other agencies that had used them as well. Then this brings us to the Freestyle 2. Obviously, this is 2020, so we're introducing it this year. Significant improvements over the previous designs. It actually does have daylight scanning capability. The unit or the computer for it is actually worn on your belt or on your shoulder, and then so we're using an on-screen device or a phone actually as the UI or the user interface for it. I think an important note is that there's no annual calibration required for this device. And this, even though we just introduced it, it had already been used, as my British friends would say, in anger on a homicide case in Europe already. So as you can see, so we're using a phone for the UI, but the device itself has a really nice rubberized coating. We have start-stop controls, and you can connect it either via USB if you want to keep it tethered, or you can just connect it to the device's Wi-Fi. And what that enables you to do is as you're capturing something, let's say you wanted to capture the top of a vehicle or underneath a table or something, rather than having to go up on top of a ladder or whatever, you can actually take the phone, the UI we'll call it, and hold it in your hand and do it separately, similar to the way we used to do it before. But something else I want to point out is that it really has a great feel. And something that Gabe is going to elaborate on a little bit a while later, but it feels really comfortable in your hand. So a couple other things about how it works. So it is a structured light scanner, and what that means is we're actually projecting an array of dots onto the scene, and that's how we're actually determining where the device is in 3D space. So there's 2 cameras that actually read that grid, and then we've got an integrated color camera we actually use to capture the frames, and then it's got 3 LEDs to strobe and help to illuminate your scene. The belt PC, we call it, or the mobile PC, you can wear it over your shoulder, like I said. It's got an i7 processing unit inside. It's actually a really good computer. You can connect it up via USB, and or I should say via your HDMI, and it works just like a normal computer. You can plug a keyboard, mouse, etc. into it. It does run Windows 10, and a really interesting fact is that it uses the same identical Focus S battery. So if you have a Focus S scanner, the battery you have can actually be used with this device as well. We thought that would give maximum versatility for those existing Freestyle or Focus users. So let's talk briefly about differences in how we scan with the Freestyle 2 as compared to the Freestyle 1. Now, a real common question we get is can we merge Focus data or Freestyle data with Focus data? And the answer is yes. You're looking at the newest FARO Studio in the COVID-19 world, which also happens to double as my garage. And you'll notice that that we have the scan, we have the small targets laid out. And again, they're not absolutely necessary, but it does make it really handy. If you capture it with your Focus scanner, then you can just do an automatic registration of the Freestyle scans to the Focus scans. It helps to remove a lot of the hassle. And plus, because we've captured the entire body in one scan, you don't have to do individual registration scan to scan. I think this is a really important feature. But some things I'd like to point out, this is actually my youngest son's ex-girlfriend now, as we know that those scenes, that can be kind of a nebulous environment with dating and not dating. But so she was our model. She's very happy to be labeled as dead girl, something she has embraced. But if you notice the detail, a couple of things I want to point out are, you can notice that you can see her shoestrings. They're very clearly captured. Her leggings and even the bracelet that she's wearing, but things like her hair, which can be a very difficult thing to actually capture in 3D. But we did it in one scan in 3 minutes. So here I want to point out that we can see the detail on the bottom of her shoes. And if you look over toward her hands are very clearly captured. Now, one more point that I want to make is that, so it's not real blood, it's fake blood. We didn't actually injure the young lady, but the liquid was captured by the device, which typically with a terrestrial scanner, when we go to capture a blood pool or any other type of liquid, it actually ends up being a void. So, but with the Freestyle, we can actually capture it. So here we have a scan. As you can see, it's very detailed. This was 2 scans, and I did it in approximately 6 minutes. So that's 3 minutes each. I did that math in my head. But if you notice that there are a lot of really cool details, like for instance, you see smudges on the entertainment panel in the front, and you can even see the very small phone cord is captured, and just the details of the car's cabin as well. Here's a view just from the other side. And again, you can see all of the details from the air conditioning vents to the logos and everything in the vehicle. And here, just as a reference, here's the actual photo of the interior. It's not the same lighting because we don't have the strobe from the scanner illuminating it. So just to show you how close it is. I want to show you quickly what the actual live capture looks like. The reason I want to do this is sometimes I've seen where devices are shown doing 3D capture, or you may have experience with the previous unit, and I want to show you that we're capturing it in real time. So I like to start and end on what we call the calibration plate. So loop closure is important, but notice this is the real-time capture. This isn't sped up. You can see down on the left for the scan time, you see the seconds are ticking off just the way they're supposed to. Some really cool things about this. So capturing footwells was always a difficult thing with the previous scanner, but now we can do it. The other couple things I want to point out is you notice the dark voids where we don't have data. That's a great indicator to show you where you still need to capture data where it may not be captured as thoroughly as you might like. And so as we're moving around on the interior of the vehicle, it's like painting with light. Okay, and you notice how as we move around, so any areas that we want to do additional capture, we just hold the device on it. If you need, you can even rotate the device upside down, so you don't lose tracking. Tracking is significantly improved. Everyone that we put this in the hands of that had previous experience commented right away about the tracking. And if you want to capture data more densely, all you need to do is just move slower. So for instance, the A-pillar that we're capturing right here, it's basically a black mirror, yet we're able to actually capture it even though it's a very shiny reflective surface. So as you see, as I'm moving around and capturing additional areas on the vehicle, I thought, well, I might as well, I want to capture a little bit more. So just to capture more of the rubber molding, and then on the very shiny side of the vehicle as well. And then as, I don't think I have an image of it, but we're able to capture the rotor, the caliper, and even the valve stem on the wheels. And then I'll finish, again, back at the calibration plate, just to close the loop. And I want to show you what the scan looks like. So something that's really important, you can verify before you leave your scene that you've actually captured what you wanted to. So I turned on something called mesh visualization. Now this is not the final process scan, but you can use this just to make sure that you captured everything that you wanted to before you leave the scene. This is the vehicle. So actually our special guest, Gabe, had a hand in capturing this vehicle. So it was one scan, and it was less than 5 minutes to capture this. Again, we did it in one scan because it just makes it so much simpler. But because the device is so powerful, now we can do it much quicker, much faster. Better data, faster. So if we look at the front end damage, and again, this isn't a photograph, this is the actual scan data. And something I like to do I like to add this ambient occlusion shader to really highlight the amount of data that's been captured. And again, this was 5 minutes approximately to capture this scan. If you need more detail, you simply dwell longer. And just as on a whim, we turned off all the lights. This was an inside indoor scan. We turned off all the lights, and I captured the side of this same vehicle in complete darkness. The only thing, there were some LEDs back in the distance in the garage where we did this. So one scan, I did this in roughly about 2 minutes. And then again, I ran the ambient occlusion shader on it just to show you the amount of detail that we're able to capture in a very short amount of time. This is probably one of my favorite scans to show. It's my mountain bike. And so you see that this was an 11-minute scan. You might ask, well, why did you take so long, Dave? Well, I'll tell you, because I wanted to make sure that I got all the details of this particular bike. And if we were to do this with a terrestrial scanner, in order to be able to capture all of these cavities and voids on the vehicle, on the bike, sorry, it would take a lot of time. We'd have to do some very low scans, some high scans. And I think, as you all know, if you've ever done any type of scans like this, you also get a lot of stray noise, edge artifacts and things off of the scan. So we'll show you what this actually looks like. And I know this is gutsy, but these are the actual scans. And as you notice, a couple of things I want to point out as we zoom in here, the spokes on the bike are actually 2 millimeters in diameter. And if you notice those very, very small wires, those are actually roughly right about 1 millimeter, maybe 1.2 millimeters. And my American friends, you'll have to do the conversion in your head. So if you notice all the details, we can actually capture the chain, the sprockets, and even all the way down to the fasteners are captured. You see we have all of the cables, my drink bottle, which nobody else would probably want to drink. Notice how we captured the treads, and you even see the holes in the rotors. And again, this was in 11 minutes to capture the scan. I did no voodoo. I did no magic on this. This was what you see is what we captured. I did hide, there's a couple of stray points floating around. I did hide that in some clipping boxes, but this is basically what we captured. Now, one of the things I really like about using the ambient occlusion shader is that it really highlights the details very, very clearly. You can see, if you look, you notice that we can capture the tread very clearly, and even all the cabling, the spring on the kickstand, the pedals. You see all of the sprockets. Now, I mean, we can't actually capture everything on the sprockets. If I would have supported the device, I probably could have done even a better job. Although I think I did a pretty good job with it. I'm pretty geeked about this scan. We also have this as a Sketchfab file that we can send you, so you can have the same file and be able to rotate it around and look at it in 3D. So again, very, very happy with this and how it turned out, and especially in 11 minutes. 11 minutes with a terrestrial scanner, we might do 2 scans on something. I want to show you what the scanner looks like in action, just so you get a rough idea of the size of it. Now, to be fair, this is Renee, who's one of our developers in Germany. Renee's about 195 centimeters tall, and so for our American friends, that's about 6'5". So it looks a little small in his hand. So the device isn't quite that small, but Renee's a pretty big guy. And here we have another guy, more average height, and so he's actually doing another scan of this same vehicle. So with that, we'd like to turn it over to Gabe, and Gabe's going to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he thinks.
Hello, everybody. Gabe Mullinax. I'm with the Knox County Sheriff's Office in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm the lieutenant over our forensic services unit. So I've been in the forensic mapping or mapping world since about 2000. So obviously I've seen quite a bit of technology improve over the years, from moving lasers and total stations and then into the scanning world and all of this stuff. So I was fortunate enough to get my hands on, David had called and got my hands on one of the Freestyle 2s And I'll just jump into the good old being in law enforcement for 23 years. I'll just lay it out there pretty easily for all of us. It's extremely cop friendly. That's the best part about it. I literally walked in, talked to David for probably 15, 20 minutes about this, and he's like, "You ready to give it a shot?" And it was really that simple. We went over what I was actually holding. He showed you the computer that straps around, real lightweight. It's not cumbersome. It's not large. It's very small. It's got there again, with the gear that we're wearing or anything that you might have on a scene, it fits snug to the system that they have that holds that computer system where it needs to be. They've done a little homework with the straps and everything, keeps it out of your way. For anybody that may have been a motorman or anything like that, or just a good traffic cop, motorman like I was or anything. Basically, if you're holding a radar gun, it's just a little bit bigger than a radar gun. And David mentioned painting with light, and it's funny that he said that, because while I was doing it, I was actually envisioning myself spray painting or a Wagner paint sprayer. I had far better luck with Freestyle 2 than I did with a Wagner paint sprayer, I might add. I'm horrible with running the paint, but luckily there's no paint here. But the size, the simplicity of just picking this thing up and literally being able to watch what you're doing on the screen. I'm a very visual person, so to be able to look at that phone and the display and to look at what I'm doing, and David mentioned any of the dark points, the dark spots that are there, it's as simple as that. You look where those pieces might be, you go back, spend a little more time on point, all of a sudden it cleans it all up. The body that David showed, his son's ex-girlfriend, the body that he showed right before I got to scan with the Freestyle 2, we had a homicide in an extremely tight situation inside. The interior of the house was very small. It was in a hallway, just a typical hallway. So moving, and we have a Focus S right now. Using the Focus, as great as it is and as much as I love it, I immediately thought, man, I wish I had this Freestyle 2, because getting into those smaller spaces, and just as simple as I said, you're spray painting this image, or painting with light, as David said, you can immediately see what you're capturing, what you're not capturing. You simply move where you need to move, and it's that simple. So being able to have one of these, and if you're lucky enough to integrate it with a Focus system, I can't imagine it getting much better. I'm sure that, eventually we're going to keep going like we have over the years that I've seen scanning come. But having those two and using those two together, it's going to be hard to beat, especially if you're dealing with a body. Now back to the vehicle. That was, like David said, under 5 minutes. I'd never held one of these in my hand before. I strapped the computer around my hand, painted with light, walked around, watched exactly what I was doing, walked around the vehicle, all sides, back to where we started. Boom, we're done. And I thought, there's no way that it's this simple. You're watching what it does. You're able to immediately verify what you've done, see your work product. And just like I said at the beginning, my favorite thing about it is, in a very complex world, a lot of times with technology and everything, this is probably the most cop-friendly system that I've seen. I just picked it up. I went to work. Just like I said, I talked to David for maybe 20 minutes. We scanned that white SUV that you saw earlier, and that's the actual product that we got. Underneath the hood, for reconstruction guys, if you have anything like that, or anybody that would have anything with small details, underneath the hood of that SUV, it was absolutely phenomenal. You would have to move, prior to, you would have to move so many different ways to get that information. and to get it locked in. And this thing was literally, I love that term, David, painting with light, because that really sums it up. And it's that easy, like spray painting in my head. That's what I've got. So, and this is after, you know, a less than 5-minute scan. I'm actually that excited about this product. I'm here to tell you that does not happen with me often at all. You know, I'm a pretty hard sell. I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And just like I said, that scan in less than 5 minutes has me this dedicated to something that I'm very passionate about and I love doing. So I hope that gives you guys some insight and perspective on, from, you know, a 23-year cop, of how easy this is and how amazing the product is, in my opinion. So back to you, David.
All right, excellent. Great job, Gabe. Thank you very much. So hard to top what Gabe was saying. So he's very eloquent, very experienced, obviously. I want to show you something that Alina scanned. This is her uncle Edward, I think she said. Some people keep urns. Well, Alina keeps skulls, I guess. I'm joking, by the way. It's not really her uncle. It might be her aunt. But I wanted to tell you that this is not a photograph. This is actually the scan data of the skull. So now, and she used no special, no flash on the device at all. She had some lighting. She's kind of a lighting nerd anyway, but so she lit this, and she just captured it in, again, one scan around the device, around the object. So 3D printing, a very common topic that comes up. You know, what can we do with our laser scan data, and can we 3D print it? And the answer is yes. So the image I just showed you was the scan. It was actually done up by Gabe's at Gabe's agency, and then was turned into a 3D print. Something I want you to really pay attention to, if you notice, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you notice that we have the shift lever, we have the signal lever, we have the steering wheel. This is actually a purse that was sitting on the seat, and you even see all of the levers. You see the lug nuts and the holes on the rim itself, and just amazing detail we're able to capture. Here's from a little different angle. Obviously, this vehicle impacted some tall cylindrical objects similar to a telephone pole. And then if we look at what the 3D print of it is, you see that it's really quite good. Very compelling. So, and I wanted to give a plug out to a good guy, Matt Blackwood. And he's got a company called Scanning Cars. He's the one that worked on that. We worked on it actually this last weekend. And you see his email address there. Feel free to give Matt, send Matt an email, ping him if you want. Great guy. If you need a 3D model for, especially for crash related stuff, Matt's your guy. That sounds like a commercial.
I want to introduce somebody to you. So we are currently in the demo studio in Lake Mary, Florida. This is Rafael Montanez, and Rafael Montanez is an application specialist with FARO. This is his studio he is letting me borrow today. So if you do indicate at any point in time that you would like to receive a demo on the Freestyle, we can do that virtually for you. And Rafael is going to answer any questions you have one-on-one, so that he can help find how it fits into your workflow and how you can add Freestyle to your technology toolbox. So Rafael, audience Rafael. Now when you book your demo, you know who you're going to talk to. All right, so it is time for Q&A. So David, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, let her rip.
All right, so Stephanie would like to know, how well does Freestyle 2 handle reflective materials?
Great question. So reflective materials are, they can be a challenge, obviously. So your mileage may vary if there's any bit of dust at all. So I don't know if you noticed on the SUV that we scanned, and also the Toyota, we actually were able to capture some of the reflective surfaces. So if there's any particulate at all, you'll typically pick it up. Most of the vehicles that I've scanned have actually been able to pick up some of the glass. Now, I haven't tried chrome specifically, so that might be a little difficult. So I hope I answered your question. That's a tough one. There's some laws of physics our German associates haven't quite broken yet. So it does okay.
Okay. So we have a question now from Stephen, who would like to know, you shared a lot of scans that you've done today. Are they cleaned up?
Great question, Stephen. So all the scans that I showed you today, there was no cleanup done. The bikes I did, there were a couple of points that were floating around, and I hid those in clipping boxes, but otherwise what you saw is what I got. So, and believe me, I don't like to have to clean up scans any more than anyone else, but great question.
Yeah, that was a great question. We have a question from Cole, who would like to know, how well does Freestyle 2 perform in sunlight?
Excellent question. So, so it's going to perform roughly about roughly half the frame rate that you'll capture in a shaded condition, and I think we have to qualify what daylight is. So, roughly about 45,000 lux is going to be, on the higher range of what you'll be able to capture. What you'll notice first off is that you need to slow down. It performs, but doesn't perform as good as it does in a shaded situation. If you can, let's say you have a body and you want to be able to capture it, just putting up any kind of shade over it and you'll be able to capture it, or if it's an overcast condition. So it does really well outdoors, especially compared to the other unit. I think you want to get a demo and see how it performs. Good question.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, this question is for both David and Gabe, if he has any input here. They want to know how, Luke wants to know, how can you use the images from the scanner as evidence in court?
I'll take that. So the images from the scanner, they're actually captured in a file format. So, and the images are probably about 1.3 megapixels, something like that. So I would say no. You're going to capture the raw data anyway. I would actually have to look into that and see if the images are stored. I'm sure it's stored in the raw file, because we always save our raw scans. I'd have to see if we could actually get to that. Great question. Not sure I have an exact answer, but if somebody wants to take a note, I'll try to dig into that and we can get back to them.
Sure, sounds good. And we've got a question from Eric, who wants to know about resolution and accuracy. So can we talk resolution and accuracy, and resolution and accuracy specifically when you're measuring points inside scene software?
Yeah, so again, great question. So I would recommend, reference measurements for anything that you do forensically related. As far as resolution, you saw that we were able to actually pick up the small cable that was just a little over 1 millimeter in diameter. So the resolution is really quite good. Typically, it's going to be roughly in that like 0.2 millimeter range is what I've been told is the minimum resolution that you can capture. I don't know, Marco, if you want to chime in at all. And then as far as the accuracy, I think we're advertising that it's 1/2 of a millimeter at 1 meter.
Okay.
That's very accurate, David.
Thank
Great. You guys are not stumping David. You're going to have to try a little harder. All right. John would like to know, what is the typical file size that we're talking here? Maybe something like the interior of a vehicle?
Right. Great question. They're all great questions, but yeah. So the inside of a vehicle, like the one you saw of the inside of the Corvette, with those two scans, that's probably going to be roughly about 1.5 gigabytes, maybe 2 gigabytes. Larger scans like the bike is going to be probably about 3 gigabytes by the time you're done. That's with just all the raw data. As you do anything in scene, so as an example, when I imported the bike again with the ambient occlusion filter, then you all know this, but the file size is going to steadily grow, as you add things or as you do saves and things like that. But the raw data is going to be roughly about that size.
Great. Question from Megan. She would like to know how Freestyle 2 handles smaller objects. So maybe if you had small pieces of evidence, fragments from a vehicle collision, pieces of headlights, anything that's relatively small.
Yeah, so I would say you're going to do pretty well. Like, let's just say, we'll just use a thumb drive as an example, right? So you would be able to scan this, you'd be able to see the outline of it. The detail is going to start to fall off as you get down into the really, really fine details of it. But again, if you want to capture higher density points, you dwell longer in that particular area. Again, great question.
Lots of good questions today. We have one question from Luke about battery life.
Yeah, so battery life is, if you're scanning steady, you're probably going to get about an hour and a half out of your battery, roughly like that. If you're using it on standby, right? So you scan something, you set it down, scan something, set it down. I don't know why you would do that, but let's say you did that. Then you're probably going to get about 4 hours or so out of the life of the battery. And the cool part is if you've got a focus scanner, you can just interchange batteries with that. Focus S.
Thanks, David. All right. Carl would like to know, can you use an additive like a dry powder to help with reflective surfaces if you're going to scan those?
Absolutely. Again, great question. I've done quite a bit of testing with coating of vehicle glass, chrome, things like that. And the answer is absolutely. So you can use a dulling spray. You can use some type of powder. You can make your own. You can purchase it. But yes, absolutely. And it doesn't take much. So one of the things I wanted to point out, that SUV that we pointed, or that we scanned, we actually captured the glass. We didn't put anything on it. The force of the impact caused a lot of the engine lubricant to basically coat the side of the vehicle, and that was actually on the glass. So it wasn't even a powder or anything. All we need is something on there to be able to pick up. So very, very light coating, and you'd be able to pick it up really well. Because I've got another scan I can't show you, is for an active vehicular homicide case. Would love to show you. The detail is fantastic, but it had been sitting outside in just a very light coating of dust, and we picked up, it was a black vehicle nonetheless, and we were able to pick up everything with the Freestyle 2 on it. Worked great.
Great. Yeah, we're getting a lot of great questions. We got about 5 more minutes. Greg would like to know, what's the maximum range?
Yeah, so maximum range, you can capture all the way up to like 10 meters if you want to. The only caution I would say is the accuracy is going to fall off as you get farther away. The reason that's important is it's really useful for tracking. So one thing, if you've ever used if you used any of our previous models, you had to go into what I call sloth mode, right, where you'd have to go very, very slowly not to lose tracking, and that's not the case here. Tracking is significantly improved, and if you choose that range, you can choose up anything from 1 meter to 10 meters, whatever data you want to retain. So you can, the question you're probably asking is, or going for is, could you use it on a room? And the answer is yes. In fact, I think Alina even scanned a guest room in her house with it. I know I've scanned almost anything you can think of with it. I've probably done personally 200 hours of testing on this device and working with R&D. So again, great question.
Yeah, and that participant read my mind, because I was going to ask that question as well. So we did have a question, can you scan a whole room? Yes, you definitely can. As David mentioned, I, in addition to scanning uncle or aunt, whoever, I scanned a small room, probably 12 by 12, and it took me about 6 minutes, and I did it in one scan. So I didn't have to worry about registering anything together. All right, so back to our questions. We've got a question. Is Freestyle 2 compatible with older model focus scanners? And would they have to upgrade their software version of Scene?
Ooh, okay, that's a little bit longer answer. So short answer is yes, it's definitely compatible. The data is the data. To process the Freestyle scans, you would need to have the most recent version of the Scene software. So you could, but again, the most recent version of the Scene software is backward compatible with all the devices. Now, something that's important to note is when you buy the Freestyle, it comes with the introductory offer. It comes with a 1-year subscription of Scene, of the latest version. So I don't know why I forgot to mention that, but yeah. So I think that covers all your bases.
It surely does. And since we're talking about Scene, let's talk Scene to Go, right? So our users know that you can create Scene to Go data to share with other people that might not have Scene software or an app or a license. So when we make our Freestyle 2 data, can we share that with Scene to Go?
Absolutely. I'm just going to stop saying good question because they're all good questions. But yeah, so what you do is when you have Freestyle 2 data, now you won't have the scanner view, the planar view that you capture with the device, right? So you have to actually create something called a virtual scan. Virtual scan is just you pick a viewpoint and I had done it in my new FARO garage studio. And I had done that where I had scanned the entire garage with the Freestyle. And then I created virtual scans wherever I wanted them, which is the other really cool thing about it. You aren't limited to where you captured the scan from. You just move to a position, you create a virtual scan, which is essentially a photosphere from that particular location. And then you can export that to either to WebShare Cloud, or you can export it to Scene2Go.
Great. All right, so we are running a little bit short on time.
Okay.
Do you want to take one more? You know what, Dave, I'm going to give you one more question because I know it's got a fairly short answer, and then we'll wrap it up. We talked about our distance, or our max range that we could scan. What about the minimum? How close can we get to something we're scanning?
Glad you brought that up. So the minimum distance you can scan is 0.4 meters, which is really exceptional. Something else that I wanted to bring up, actually I'm surprised Gabe forgot it because it was one of the things he really liked, was when you get too close to the device, it's got haptic feedback. So that means that as you get too close to a surface, the handle will actually start to buzz, and it will coach you to move back to an appropriate range. And that starts roughly about half a meter or so, and then you'll know to back off. There's also a guide. So if you're coming close to that threshold of losing tracking, you'll actually have a bar that shows up on the side, and it will give you a value of how good your tracking is, and you can if you have to slow down. So an example is going to be if you're on a surface that doesn't have a lot of features, and tracking is always going to be compromised. Now, compromised a bit of a challenge when you have features that don't have or areas that don't have a lot of features to capture.
Thank you, David. All right, so we are coming up on our end time. I want to be super respectful of everybody's time today. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Mullinax for spending some time with us, not only today, but in the time that he spent testing. I know it was so tedious for you, Lieutenant, to play with our new toy, but thank you so much for giving us your real user feedback. That's something that's extremely valuable to FARO. So thank you to all of our panelists that are on today answering these questions. If we did not get a chance to get to your question, we're going to follow up with you in an email. Now, one more thing for you. We're going to put a link in the Q&A that takes you to our knowledge base. And the knowledge base page has got all kinds of information about Freestyle 2, including the technical specification sheet. So all of our ranges and accuracies and weights and all of the technical details. And then it's also got some of the printed markers. If you wanted to print those out and use them, those are free. And we've got all kinds of the information on Freestyle 2 so that you can head on over there when you're done and learn more. Don't forget, you can also book your demonstration with Raphael. So on behalf of myself and all of our panelists today, thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. We hope you're as excited about Freestyle 2 as we are. So have a great day, and please be safe.